Panel here is the consumerization of Web3 beyond the crypto winter. So we're in the midst of the winter, and I'm really glad that we have a real expert in the field with us, Toni Mateos. Toni, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit and maybe a few words about Freeverse?
Okay, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a scientist. My background is in the academia, in mathematics, physics, quantum gravity, string theory, and that stuff. I left the academia in 2006, founded a startup that created what these days is called Dolby Atmos. If you've gone to the cinema recently and you see Dolby Atmos, be aware that this started in Barcelona in a research center, and then a startup, and then we were acquired, and it rebranded to Dolby Atmos. And this is my second adventure as entrepreneur with Freeverse, a company that we'll tell about what the vision of the company is, but it was founded in 2019. And now we're doing pretty well with a financing round that went extremely well this year. And we can talk about what we do if you want as we speak.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. So to get us started, I just wanted to share sort of five I think important sort of observations. The first is, I guess, towards the end of 2020, we saw an almost sort of mass market adoption of NFTs. There was a massive wave of consumerization. We will talk about that. Many consumer brands sort of adopted NFTs, played around with it. Then in 2021, we had the highest investment ever into crypto and Web3 businesses. 52 billion were invested. Was the first wave, that just saw 8 billion in 2018 that created companies like Soraya, amongst others. So there was a lot of capital put to work. Obviously, a lot of talent went into the crypto industry, into the Web3 industry. We will speak about talent, I guess, Toni, also in a second. So there's a massive sort of capitalization of that industry. But nevertheless, and I think that's important, and it's also, I guess, why we have a great conversation today, is the crypto market has crashed, as all of us sort of have read, and that actually forced the markets to separate the good from the bad and the ugly, I guess, right? I mean, there's probably also maybe a healthy sort of development. And I think this is the interesting part, we believe that, volatility obviously carries a lot of chances, and it's a crucial point in time, I guess, towards the mainstream adoption of Web3. So I guess that those are, I think, five, important observations. So maybe, Toni, we start with, with a very simple question. Can you just describe a little bit sort of what you do at Freeverse, why you think that sort of the kind of NFTs you are creating will create more long-term value than maybe others? So maybe just a little brief overview of your platform.
Yeah, sure. So this crypto winter that you've described fits very well with the vision that we had when we started the company. We were blown away by CryptoKitties, like I guess many of you know it, but basically by the possibility of owning something digital that you don't care about for the first time how many of those you have, which would be tokens, fungible tokens, but about something that is this particular thing, right? So digital ownership of something unique in the blockchain. We're blown away by that. And at the same time by the challenge, the technical challenge that was behind that. The entire of Ethereum was basically collapsed when the very first successful application, CryptoKitties, collapsed it with 10,000 daily active users, okay? So this is peanuts. It's nothing for a AAA game these days, or even for a medium-sized video game or application. So the challenge there was, okay, there is a technical barrier to using digital ownership the way that we would love it to be used. And the first examples we're going to be seeing are not the ones that we love. We're not into collectibles. None of the founders is actually into collecting stuff in the real world, right? It's fine. In the real world, collecting stuff is just the tip. It's nothing compared to the economy, the entire economy of goods and physical services. We believe that the same happens, and is happening right now, and will happen in the digital world. We've just seen the explosion of applications that were based on collecting things, because you can just do a few of them, and the only business case that you have around them is actually making a drop with a very limited, artificially scarce set of those NFTs, expecting that the initial price is going to be high. And these applications are, okay, they have a life, but we've seen the bubble burst. The vision of the company, and this is what we provide now, is can you actually move to a paradigm where you have abundance? Instead of having scarcity, let's be able to create millions of those, change them, etc., so that the initial value, because you're creating millions, can be very low or even zero, right? So zero entry barrier to everyone in the world. And let's make the market value of those things that people are acquiring depend on what people do with them. So from speculation, right? From expecting that somebody will buy the same thing that you bought in the past, to earned value. In that process, let the user change the thing that he bought or she bought by interacting with the app, by interacting with the ecosystem, by doing actions that the creator of that thing really wanted. And eventually you will be raising the market value of that because it's going to be more useful to other users of the platform, right? So migrating from speculation to earned value. And for that, you need a technical progress. You need something behind that allows you to create NFTs in millions, evolve them over time, and link the evolution of those to daily actions that the users are doing. Freeverse provides that. You can think of it, we are a B2B hardcore tech company that helps any company that wants to do NFTs with earned value instead of speculative value. Also, if you want to do speculative, but most clients come to us for the earned value core proposition. It allows them to do that, create NFTs in millions, and evolve them over time as many times as needed, according to what users, the owners of the NFTs, do with them.
Great. And when you I mentioned at the beginning that sort of big consumer companies also moved into NFT world. Nike bought even a an NFT design studio. Adidas is experimenting with it, and also big sports brands, right? So big football clubs, basketball clubs, are also in that game. What are your clients? What do you see? Is it more moving back to niche, or is it's going to be adopted by mass market brands?
It's definitely going mainstream, no doubt. There is, even despite the crypto winter, there's so many incredible projects that are being built by large companies. We're not talking about small ones. And I would say the main verticals that we are seeing super active right now are in the video game industry. You've all heard about it, but migrating away from just play to earn, which is almost an investment game rather than an enjoyable experience, right? Migrating to video games that are really engaging, AAA kind of video games that use this concept of earned value as opposed to just onboarding players that just want to make money. As well as the other vertical is brands. Brands in the generic sense, from sports clubs, to actual, to Nike, you've seen Starbucks, but even to individuals as a brand. So an influencer, right? So any of the TikTokers can now gamify what they are doing themselves. Basically, they are the product, and interact directly with the user base and the fans that love them in a way that is non-speculative. So I think all this is approaching and coming, and we're going to be seeing that in the next few years.
And how do you think, clearly one thing is obviously buying an NFT and investing into it. The other is obviously how to, as an individual, how to exit, how to sell it. How do you think, how do you describe the liquidity of these NFTs, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, so right now liquidity, because the main use case right now is still kind of speculative. So I'm going to buy something and expect to sell it for a higher price. Then liquidity is not that large, and mostly driven by speculation, as we were saying before. But as soon as we start migrating to this new model, where the NFT that I'm selling is something that has more value to others, because I've put my talent, my passion, my time on it, I think we're going to see a completely different type of liquidity, where people buy stuff from others because it's more useful to them than just buying it directly from the company, perhaps.
We have maybe 6 minutes left. One thing that I'm obviously also curious to learn a little bit about Freeverse and how you actually have been observing the fundraising environment, right? So I said at the beginning in 2021, this is also when you raised, your Series A of $10 million. saw, obviously a massive wave of capital coming into the industry, 51 billion. But also, I guess you started your business 2019 when we had the first sort of crypto winter. So how do you describe sort of the two different environments, and what sort of, and now obviously, the tide is turning again, and we are sort of again in a winter. So how do you plan your sort of the capitalization of your business?
Fundraising has been completely different. It's a completely different story. In 2019, we had to explain the investors, every investor we had in front, what the blockchain is. Let's begin with what the blockchain is. Yeah. Some knew about it, and hardly anyone knew about what NFTs were. So step one, tell the person about blockchain. Step two, tell the person about NFTs. Step three, tell them about the first use case of the NFTs that's gonna be what we just saw bursting right now. So we're gonna go through this stage, okay? And we're building for the next stage. So that was incredibly hard, incredibly hard. You had to have people really believe in the team and they will do something useful. Let's put some money there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the recent round was completely different. The NFTs were at the peak of their popularity when we raised money. But interestingly, the investors that finally came to us, more interested on us, were investors that were looking in the long term into the infrastructure part, etc. So looking at what's beyond, they already knew this was going to burst. They kind of believed on it, and they saw us as, it's right, this actually can have longer value for users than just buying something and selling for a higher price.
Yeah.
So it was much, much easier. We closed the last round in a few months only compared to the initial one.
And Toni, the one thing the other thing I said, obviously there was a lot of capital flowing into the industry that attracted a lot of talent. So how do you sort of look at the talent space for your business? Where do you find your talent? And you're Barcelona based.
Yeah.
How do you sort of approach that?
Yeah, this was one of the questions that we had at the beginning when starting up, deciding the country in which you want to do that.
Yeah.
And there were many, one of us wanted to go to the US. We are not all from Spain, the founders. The reason why we finally remained in Barcelona is that our previous experience told us that it was so much easier to attract at least technical talent than compared to the US, the UK, or the Northern Europe, I would say in general, no?
Yeah.
In my previous experience, in that startup that I was talking to you about, Dolby Atmos, I just realized that we had hired an amazing team when we were acquired, and I had the chance to compare the team we had with the international teams that Dolby had in San Francisco, Beijing, Sweden, etc. We were, some of the members in our team were superstars. They were considered superstars in this new corporation that we joined, right?
Yeah.
And we had, and we had spent so much less than any other startup would have in any of these countries, right? To the point that we became kind of Dolby R&D, Barcelona, and we just eventually grew and grew, just hiring technical guys of super good quality for an incredibly reasonable salary. So we decided to remain in Barcelona because of that, and it's proven to be a good decision.
Yeah.
We are being able to onboard people that anywhere else in the world, they would be making 3 times the money they are making before coming to us. They are going to be treated much better as well, because the conditions in Spain, outside the startup world, the culture, the working culture is perhaps not so attractive as in the startup world or in the tech world worldwide. So when they come to you, they have a decent salary, a much better salary, and a much better working conditions where everybody's respected and stuff. So we're finding it much easier to grow now that we've tripled in almost a year. And it's proven to have been a good decision that we started up here. There are other downsides, of course, like access to capital is much better in other places. So we had to put it in the balance.
Yeah, great. No, that's great to hear. And one very last sort of question, and maybe we keep it short. What's in your view the sort of the biggest obstacle for mass market adoption of Web3 NFT?
Yeah.
It's a big question, I know, but maybe a short answer. Super
quick then. So there are different barriers, right? One is technical scalability. If blockchains could scale today, all of them, we would be living in a completely different world, and all the use cases, we would have new use cases every week, like really reaching the mass market. So scalability is one, technical. The other one is product-wise. I think people building products around the blockchain are realizing about what is just a bubble and what really retains users, and this is the new wave of products that we're going to be seeing the next year.
Yeah.
And I think the new super big thing that's going to be coming slowly because it takes time depends on legal more than on technical, which is the day we start seeing real life assets tokenized and the ownership of it being on the blockchain and stuff. This is going to happen very slowly for obvious reasons, but that's going to be a super big boom because it opens the world to connecting physical and world and the blockchain, and the use cases there are massive.
Perfect. Toni, thank you so much for joining me today. And we will have obviously a very close look at how Freeverse is developing. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Pleasure having you. You know, after the burn, we had the merge.